Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to the February edition of Molten Music Monthly. Now if you've been following me this week, you'll know that I've had my head right up the arse of the Deckard's Dream. And by golly, has it been exciting. An exciting week. And you'll know that in the end, I got sound out. Yes, good golly, it's been very exciting. It's not quite completely, absolutely, complete perfection yet. There's a few little bits and pieces I'm still trying to iron out. But heck, it's good enough for me. Good enough for me. So what should we do now? Oh, I know. Roland's got a new synth out. Pittsburgh Modular have had a Taiga for tea. SOMA Labs has a box of utilities. Telmatronics makes music with fluorescent tubes. Is it all over for Vactrols? What the heck is a Vactrol? Behringer pulls a voice out of the Jupiter 8. Oxi Instruments puts every kind of synth into a Eurorack module. Steinberg still thinks Halion is a good idea. Arcaico Synths puts out a software plugin. Casper and Bastl instruments fight it to the death over a VCA. Raindigit gets stochastic in astral planes. Vongon has the best delay pedal ever. Nord goes into stage 4. Midicake ARP gets a major update. FKMG gets into atmospherics. Arcaico dominates with some complex oscillations. Clank captures movement. And we have all the latest news from Synth East. But first, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm not one to shy away from controversy and often trying to point out misogyny, sexism, racism and all those sorts of isms within our industry. And when friends of mine on YouTube and the internet get embroiled in something odd, I kind of feel I just need to say something. Now it seems that the CEO of a particular huge and fantastic software instrument library and sampler instrument builder has said some rather unfortunate things. And while everyone is of course entitled to their own thoughts, their own opinions, it does, like it or not, have an impact on our industry and people, particularly within our industry. And so rather than going into the ins and outs of the whole thing, I would just like to say that without trans people, in music technology and in synthesis in particular, we would be nowhere where we are today. You could reach back to Wendy Carlos and all of the groundbreaking work that she did with soundtrack and synthesizers and modular. Of course, mutable instruments is a huge, huge part of our Eurorack legacy. And without Emily Gillett, there would be so much missing from Eurorack. And there are many more too, and will continue to be many more. And I am eternally grateful to these people for the work, their creativity and the effort and the awesomeness that they put about the place. And so anything that anybody puts about to try to make their life less bearable, I just think that's terrible. Why do that? Why do that? Moving on. Roland has a new synthesizer out. It's called the SH-4d. Now the SH-4 conjures up this idea of a vintage looking awesome type synthesizer that you just go, yeah, absolutely, that's the stuff of the old days. Awesome. Take all of that to Roland go, whoa, yeah, you know what we could do? We could take the font, right? The font used on that classic old synthesizer of ours that everybody loves, and stick that on a new featureless black thing. What'd you think? Ace, let's do that. And so we have the SH-4d. Now, let me just flip that, because all I'm saying is that, what a massive missed opportunity in as far as branding and coolness and grooviness goes. They could have made this an awesomely colourful, attractive, groovy synthesizer. You just go, oh yeah, wow, back to the old days, man. It doesn't matter what the internals are, I'm just purely talking about the front panel and the aesthetic. They could have knocked it out of the park, but no, they just used the really cool font that they use on all their most coolest of synths from way back, and have made it look a little bit dull and a bit like everybody else's. But hey, getting past that little bit of critique, because that's purely on the looks and it's purely subjective, they have actually put together a pretty decent desktop synthesizer. It's digital, of course, based on Zen Core, although it's not Zen Core, so you can't run everything else on it. But as far as I understand it, it's got the equivalent of an SH-101 and a Juno 106 in there. I mean, that's pretty awesome, all by itself. But that's not all. It essentially has 4 oscillators, so you can build up a nice stack of 4 oscillator waveforms. It's got loads and loads of polyphony, so that's not a bother. It's got some cross FM and some wavetable modules, some drawing modules, some chord modules, some weird 3D ones where it takes 3 oscillators and lets the other one become an extra LFO for a bit of added modulation. And then slapped onto the side is an entire rhythm engine with a whole bunch of kits and rhythms and patterns of stuff ready to go. It doesn't have a keyboard, it has a little button keyboard, which is, one of those things, I guess, but people don't seem to mind. What it does look like is an extremely explorable synthesizer. I like the fact you've got those 4 big faders on the oscillators so that you can change the combination of waveforms, which means you can start with something relatively simple and then just bring in layers of complexity. I think that's really nice. Also, the panel of knobs looks great. I mean, you've got your filter smack bang in the middle, and there's loads of different types and different sorts. It's kind of taking the essence of their Zen technology and just revealing it on a front panel of a piece of hardware in a really nice, neat, well thought out way. So rather than a synthesizer which is everything, which is kind of what we found with the Jupiter X and Jupiter XM, it's deciding and curating a sound design tool, a synthesizer that's going to do a particular job really well. And that, I think, is key. I think this is part of Roland's evolution, that they're perhaps finally getting to the point where they go, all right, so not every synthesizer needs to be a Phantom. Not every synthesizer needs to be a Jupiter. They don't need to have everything inside them. We can have something which does a specific, tailored job and have that done really well, so you're not overwhelmed with presets and possibilities. You're more focused in on what is essentially a bit of a groove box. They've also built in sort of gyroscopes, so you can pick it up and wave it about and that will change the sound. I mean, when you do that with anything, that changes the sound, I suppose, but this is doing that on purpose through something called demotion. So that's a pretty cool feature. So kind of all in all, you're left thinking, yeah, all right, couldn't they have just put a stripe on? It's just a stripe on the side or something. Something just to make it a little bit more interesting than the black slab on the desk. Now, somebody which has done something a bit interesting is Pittsburgh Modular. Now, they've been fiddling about for ages with lots of different little modules and some kind of animal safari menagerie thing going on, where they've got a polar bear that's a kick drum and a turkey that's a filter or something. Anyway, they've been playing with this stuff and always hinting along the way that there will be synthesizers to come. Well, the first proper synthesizer, I think, has arrived, and that's the Taiga, but Taiga something to do with some forest, frozen forest and things or something. Anyway, what's lovely about this synthesizer, it's got 3 fat oscillators running through their wonderfully gooey filter and then stuffed through a whole bunch of dynamics processing, kind of a low pass gate kind of fashion. So you have this subtractive synthesizer rolling into a more of a Buchla West Coast synthesizer. But then if you rewind back to the oscillators, you've got a whole load of different shapes that are kind of pulled and warped out of each other, and then you've got a 6-stage wave folder on each of them. So you can not only find simple waveforms, you can find complex ones and combine all those together, then stuff that through the filter and to the dynamics at the end. So it's quite a remarkable sounding thing. It doesn't sound much like many other things, which I think is probably a good thing when you're trying to design a synthesizer. It's in a chunky sort of 60 HP Mother 32 style sizing, which means that the knobs can get a little bit crowded in there. But by golly, is a lot of sound that you can be getting out of this thing. Has an effect at the end, a delay effect, which is a little bit lo-fi and crunchy, probably for most people's tastes. And at the other side, it's got a bit of a digital engine for some interesting randomization and a really good arpeggiator. And it's also fully modular, so you can address each oscillator separately via CV if you wish, or run it all together via MIDI. So it's great. It's a proper competent synthesizer. It's not expensive. I've got a full review in the channel. Go and check it out. Meanwhile, over in SOMA Labs, we have a new little box. This is called the Pulsar 23 Utilities, and it's a desktop box designed for their own Pulsar 23 drum machine. A whole bunch of extra modules, but it can be used with anything you like. It's got a whole stack of really characterful and different VCAs, which use all sorts of obsolete bits of old crap stuffed in there to give you a different flavour and a different character. They designed it apparently because the Pulsar 23 likes sources and audio sources from different places, and it's kind of designed to be able to bring stuff in from tape and to bring stuff in from other instruments and bits and pieces and places. So all of these VCAs are tailored for kind of different applications, but of course ultimately you're just colouring the sound a bit when you're using them. It's also got some wave warping in there, along with a bunch of sensory connections. So light diode, light reflecting photoresistors, I think. I don't know why I'm flapping my hand like that, but you can imagine that I'm flapping at something and light is going to it and that's changing and generating CV. There's pressure things which measure the capacitance through your body, which generates CV, and there's twangy things that generate CV. So it's kind of this thing which can generate all sorts of triggers and modulation and control voltage changes, which you can then patch in to whatever you're doing. Now when I say patch, I mean crocodile clip it, because these all use posts and the crocodile clip system that the Pulsar 23 uses. Although there does have one bay on the side which allows you to swap between Eurorack and post crocodiles things. Anyway, I think it's really interesting. I like the idea of having modular in a box, which isn't particularly Eurorack. It's not going to particularly fit into a particular thing. It just sits on your desk and starts infecting stuff, because increasingly we have little desktop synths and bits and pieces which have CV in and out. And rather than having to start building into some kind of Eurorack system, it's nice to have things which can connect between them in more of a desktop anti-door kind of way. Should be available in a couple of months. Vactrols then. Something's funny going on with Vactrols. Now, I don't know masses about this, but it did pop up and I thought it'd be worth mentioning. TipTop Audio have been releasing their awesome range of Buchla modules for Eurorack, which has been fantastic. They're, drips and drabs. Anyway, they finally got to the quad low pass gate, which is an awesome thing. Low pass gate being very much part of the Buchla scene and the whole West Coast kind of thing. And they had a note on their newsletter to say that, oh yeah, these could become available, but not really in the UK or EU because Vactrols have been banned. I went, what? What? Banned? What? What is this? Banningness? What? For what? It's just, what? A Vactrol, okay, is an LED, a light, wrapped up in darkness. It's the idea. And it's sitting next to a photoresistor, a light dependent. Oh, I don't know. It's basically the light goes on and something reacts to that, and that opens the gate. And then when the light goes off, that then closes the gate. And the reason why low pass gates are so great is because that shutting off of a light and the resistance going down over here has a very natural decay to it. And so you get this bong, this big bong bing bong type sound, which just sounds nice. We like it. It's bouncy, it's rubbery, it has this, it has this organic decay to it. And it's one of the joys of modular, that bippy boppy boingy sound. That's better. Got rid of the hiss from the Descartes dream. Anyway, it turns out that there's a chemical used in it, cadmium sulfide or something, which has essentially been banned in the EU and the UK. Right. So that means you can't make Vactrols anymore, which is crazy because they're everywhere. They're in all sorts of things, music-wise, pedals, synths, modular, all sorts of places. So what are we going to do? Well, TipTop says they're working on an alternative. Presumably a different sort of chemical. whatever it is that needs to be used inside. I mean, you can make Vactrols yourself. Literally, you need an LED and a photo-resistant resistor, and you wrap it up in black tape so that it doesn't leak. And that's it, you know. So, I don't know. But it did make me think that maybe, just maybe, this is the one definite, final realistically benefit of Brexit. I mean, can you imagine? I'm going to write to Boris, right, and say, look, I found something that's a genuine advantage of getting out of Europe. We, as a sovereign nation with the ability to change our own laws, which we always have been, we would be able to go, hey, we're not going to ban this particular substance because we like it. We like it very much, and we don't care if it kills us. So there you go. We could have our own thing and accept Vactrols in the UK like they have them in the US and the rest of the world, just not Europe. That might be a thing. I mean, it's got to be worth pursuing, don't you think? Otherwise, what's going to happen? Oh, I don't know. Somebody will come up with something. But the main thing is to not panic, because it's only regarding new stuff. You don't have to dig out all your Vactrols and throw them out or something like that. It's just regarding the selling of new product. So for now, then, it just means that we can't get hold of the TipTop Audio 292T low pass quad gate thing. Behringer are still teasing stuff from time to time, which we kind of ignore now, because until they actually come up with some kind of product like they haven't done for a couple of years, then it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, you can say and do what you like, but we need a piece of hardware sitting here that we can have a poke at before really we can, you know, waste a load of breath talking about it. But they did just poke up one thing, which is called the JT2, which I thought was interesting enough to do, because it just looks really great. You know, every now and again, if they keep trying it and keep putting out products, they're bound to hit on something which is just tasteful and worth looking at. This is the JT2, which is a little bit confusing in the name, I think, but the idea is that they're working on this Jupiter 8 clone, nice big fat synth. I mean, I'm sure that'll be great if it ever finally turns up. So what they've done is they've pulled out a single voice, so just one voice of the Jupiter 8, and they've stuck it into one of their Eurorack sized desktop synth things like the Neutron, and they've called it the JT2 because it has two oscillators, you see, not that it has two voices, two oscillators. So it's a dual oscillator, single voice Eurorack or desktop synthesizer. So it's a little monosynth, which is great, but they've styled it up very much in a Roland Jupiter 8 kind of way, and it looks brilliant. It looks totally good. I mean, it'll cost probably a £5 and will fall apart after a week, but as it is, it looks great. It'll probably sound great. And in some ways, I almost miss Behringer at this point. It would be quite nice if they could just sort themselves out and release something. I think that would be good. I think the world would enjoy that. Although, I mean, increasingly there's people still in forums going, oh, I'll wait for the Behringer one. Well, you know, a lot of people have been waiting a very long time for anything from Behringer now. I mean, I hope they're all right over there. I hope they sort themselves out. Now, Oxi Instruments have released a bit of a stormer of a Eurorack module. It's called Coral. Could be Coral, I suppose. I'm going to go with Coral, I think, because of the colouring. And what this is every synth in a Eurorack module. You know, kind of. It's a single 14 HP Eurorack module. It's got a knob on the front, a couple of knobs, a few patch sockets, and ultimately inside is multiple 8-voice polyphonic synthesizer sound engines. You have virtual analog, FM, you've got 2 or 3 percussive ones, you know, dedicated to kick, snare, hi-hat, that sort of thing. Wavetable, wave shaping, string, swarm, and then sample playback. So, you know, multi-sample, I suppose, sampling engines. So it's kind of every synth that you would probably need, but stuffed into a Eurorack module. Is that a good idea? Well, possibly. Possibly it is. I mean, I had a good time with the Polycinematic from Modular, and this is probably the thing that's closest to that. Or also the Vector Wave. We saw the Vector Wave recently from RYK, which gave you 4 voices of very interesting sort of wavetable FM vector synthesis. So with something like this, what it ultimately is going to come down to is how accessible it is, how changeable it is, and how well it fits into a modular environment. I don't mean just physically, I mean musically, sonically. Is it going to overwhelm everything, or is it just going to provide interest and then difference and then change? Difficult to say. Difficult to say. I mean, you're not going to be able to get to everything, but you do have front control panels for the filter and envelopes and a bit of an LFO, I think, and then you've got CV inputs. Now, this is one of the criticisms of a polyphonic module in Eurorack, is that unless it has 8 CV inputs, then you can't actually use all of the 8 voices over CV. Yeah, fair enough. So what it does have is a MIDI input, and then you can control it all via MIDI, which is great, but there's very few Eurorack modules that have MIDI that could drive it. So you're having to drive it from probably an external sequencer, like their own, the Oxi Instruments 1 or whatever it was called, or something like the Modular Chord Pilot. Interesting. But it does of course have a CV gate input, so you could play one voice or a stack of voices in a monophonic mode from CV and generally within Modular. But they've had another idea which I thought was quite interesting, and that's where you can create kind of groups within it, groups of synths, which then trigger depending on the strength of voltage that's being applied to it. So in some ways you could run it a tune and it's going to be playing different synthesizers depending on what the note is. Interesting. Now I hope to have a go on this, but I know I'm going to have a go on it because they said they'd send me one, which is awesome. They were hoping to get it to me before Synth East, but it sadly doesn't look like it will arrive in time. But I'll definitely be having a deep dive into that very soon. But ultimately it's very unexpected from Oxi Instruments. Very interesting. Not everybody's cup of tea, without a doubt. Don't know how well it fits into Eurorack. It's not everybody's thing, but I'm going to have fun trying that out. Halion 7 is upon us. Good lord. I remember Halion when it was just this little thing down here, trying to make its way amongst the world of VSG instruments by being that workstation synth, a bit like Sample Tank, a bit like a JV1080 kind of brought in to be able to be the synthesizer for every person, for every occasion, for every sort of sound that you want to be using. And that definitely has its uses. Although for me personally, it's always been one of the dullest instruments I've ever seen. I can never seem to find the panels for it. I've had a couple of Halion bass instruments over the years. That's relaxable. I've had a couple of Halion bass instruments over the years, and I can never seem to find them. You know, where do they hang out? I can't see. Where's the panel? I just get kind of lost in Halion. It's not been an interface that I've particularly enjoyed. However, as far as sample-based library systems go, it's there. It's equivalent to the XS24 on Logic, or maybe even now these days approaching Contact. I think that's what they're trying to do with the version 7. So what's new? I mean, essentially it's just been a list, and you load instruments on the list, and it's multi-timbal, 16 parts. You can run all sorts of different instruments and drum kits and all that kind of thing, and that's been fine. So what's new is that they've added an FM zone. So apparently that's a powerful new algorithmic FM synthesizer, and it has absolute Yamaha DX7 sound preset and stuff support, which is great. There's a spectral zone where you can pull sound apart in time and in space and in harmonics and resonance and all those sorts of things. They've overhauled the modulation engine to make that actually work easier, and you can also draw in your own LFOs. And there's a whole frequency modulation sound design laboratory to let you pull things in from different places, smash them together and see what kind of digital noise you get out the other end. Fabulous. So, I mean, it's great. It's not necessarily my thing, is all I'm saying, but for people who need workhorse synthesizers in software, as opposed to having a Kronos or a Phantom or Montage or something of that nature, then this looks great. Eric Synths put out a plugin. That's a bit odd. Seems a bit odd. It's the Zen Delay, which is their wonderful desktop chunky pedal type desktop type synth effect thing called the Zen Delay. It was something they built together with Ninja Tune, and now there's a virtual version for your DAW and other VST plugin supporting hosts. There's not a whole lot to say about it really. It's a delay effect. which is awesome. It's also got a bit of a built-in filter, some resonance, overdrive, feedback, all the usual sort of stuff that's going to make your delays awesome and zen-like and crunchy and fabulous and filtered and like everything that we love about Erica Synths poured into a VSD plugin that's going to delay the heck out of your audio signals. Bastl Instruments and Casper have got together to release Aikido. Aikido, it's the art of using your opponent's energy against you, but of course in a non-violent, non-lethal kind of way. And so they've built that sort of energy of movement and redirecting into what is essentially a quad VCA. It's a nice one though. A quad VCA's got nice sliders on it, mute switches, which kind of transforms it from just being a VCA into more of a mixer, more of a performance thing. So you can just reach out and turn things on and off very quickly, which I really like. In a VCA. It has sidechain compressing, so you can stuff a kick drum in there to make it all throb as you stick stuff through it, and of course it will mix together or go through individually. It can add 6 dB of gain, and along with a sidechain envelope follower, it has a spectral envelope follower which can apply spectral compression to some of the other channels. Interesting things. I have one, I've been playing with it, and I'm really only kind of using it as a VCA with mutes at the moment, but I'm going to be looking into it a lot deeper. It's certainly interesting. It's good to do something interesting with VCAs, I think, and to do that within a small space, because often I think when you get a sort of a posh, complicated VCA, you get one in a big module, whereas this is 4, so it's still very compact and useful, like a Mutual Instruments Veils, which is what I tend to use as a VCA. You can drop that right in there. You've still got all 4 channels, but you have this extra interesting, overdriven, spectral enhancing, side compression kind of stuff going on. Yeah, nice. Astral from Raindigit. Now this caught my eye, and I don't know a whole lot about it. Sadly, I haven't been able to sit down and write about it, but my understanding is that it's the world's first stochastic filtering synthesizer, which is the sort of collection of words that makes you think, I should know what this is. Astral is a combined sequencer and synthesizer that's designed to create and generate textures and sonic adventures just with a few flutters of your mouse. It has a probabilistic approach to sound generation and a stochastic approach to filtering. What does this mean? I don't know. Go and seek out the video. I mean, it looks quite extraordinary. There's lots of movement and colour, gorgeousness going on, while the sound being generated is like, where's all what? So it's very pretty, very exciting, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. But hey, this is me bringing this to your attention so that you can go off and check it out and see what you think. And then tell me if it's any good. Now, I don't normally do guitar pedals, if that's what this is, but this has really caught my attention. I don't know why. Sometimes I just get hung up on something, and this is one of those things. It's the Vongon Polyphrase pedal. Absolutely gorgeous. And what it is a stereo echo. That's it. It's got 2 nice sliders where you can have left and right going into different things. It's got a bit of mixing, depth, tone, rate, repeats, time, you know, those sort of things. Simple things. Simple things. Because I've sort of completely gone off the idea of tape echoes. I find that they're kind of I was going to say arrogant and obnoxious. I don't mean that. They're just, I just want an echo, mate. I just want to go twang and it go twang, 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 twang. So really what I'm after is a delay, not a tape echo. And I understand delays. Tape echoes tend to just bake my noodle, man. They break my brain. And I never seem to get out of them what I kind of hoped that I would. Anyway, so I was really taken in by this. And I've taken in by a few videos that I've seen of it. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. I mean, people talk about the Magneto, and they've got their cloudburst pedals and the Strymon stuff, and that's all great. But I kind of like the simplicity of this. I love the sound, the fact that you can go into infinite loops and then layer on top of each other. It just seemed like a beautiful piece of work, and I could do with some beautiful pieces of work in my life. I kind of said to myself that if I finish this, I'll reward myself by buying that pedal. I mean, it's completely, inconvenient to run with my Eurorack because it's not Eurorackable, but at the same time I could sit it on my desk and run things through it, patch things through it, play with it. The Polyphrase. What I'd really like to do a demo of Modular running through it, and if Vongon were out there and felt like, oh, we could really do with a demo of somebody doing something like that, then that would be great. I'd love to do that. You'd send me one? Oh yeah, awesome. No, of course, if you need it back at any point, just ask and I would send it back. Oh, you want to include your reverb too? Yeah, what a great idea. I mean, the two of them together would be awesome. That would be spectacular. Well, thanks ever so much. You know, potentially. If not, I don't know. I'm just going to have to... I'll have to sell the Descartes Dream in order to afford one. That's the only problem. But yeah, I thought another thing I'd just bring into your attention about how awesome that is and how fabulous. Fabulous gear, that's what we've got. That's all we really want to talk about. Nord have released the Stage 4. Oh yes, this was the most finely honed tease campaign I think I've ever seen. They released this blurred picture of something that looked exactly like a Stage 4. Well, it looked a bit like a Stage 3, so you could extrapolate from that it was the Stage 4. The replacement for their ultimate performance piano / organ / synth. The stage things are kind of like Nord's... they're like Nord's Phantom, Montage, Kronos. We're back to that thing again. Big workstation keyboards that would do the lot. I mean, the great thing about the stage stuff and the Nord stuff, other than the fact that it's red, which is already awesome, is that it's very, very hands-on. And they've not tried to complicate it. They've just gone, right, this section over here is for the synth, this section in the middle is for the piano, this section over here is for the organ. There you go. You're not trying to re-understand what all the knobs are doing because you're in a different mode. It's just all laid out, and I think that's pretty awesome. The new version, I was writing this up going, oh well, I expect they've kind of like doubled the memory, up to 10 gig or something. No, the Stage 3 memory, sample memory, because it has a sampler built in, was 500 megabytes. 500 megabytes? Is anybody dealing megabytes anymore? What? That's crazy. In fact, it wasn't even 500. It's something like 420 something. But anyway, they now have cranked it up to a full gigabyte. So you can now actually save almost a whole instrument in there. 500 megabytes. I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, so with Stage 4, going from the Stage 3, they've upped the sample size. They've also put in a much nicer keyboard. Something about triple sensors or something. So they've upped the quality of the keyboard. They've improved a whole bunch of the organs, of course a bigger piano, more synths, just more and more of everything. But they've also put in physical drawbars for the organ, which only the compact version had in Stage 3. The big proper versions had like these LED virtual ones, which I thought was a bit strange. Whereas now they've got combined LED virtual ones and physical hardware drawbars on each of them, so you can really get into your organing or organising or organing, whatever it is one does with organs and drawbars. So yeah, the Stage 4. The Midicake ARP. Love the Midicake ARP. I did this little video of it. It was so much fun. You just plug a whole load of MIDI stuff into it, set it going, and it plays everything. Brilliant. It's exactly what I want, what I like. I love an arpeggiator. I love just setting it going. But you've got a lot of control over here of what it does and where it goes and changing keys and transposition, all that sort of thing. Muting stuff in and out so you can turn off various synths and having just a beautiful, simple, lovely idea. I haven't spent anywhere near enough time with it, but I do plan to, when I've run out of things to do, I'm going to give that a really good go. So yeah, but anyways, why am I talking about it now? Well, because they've had a bit of an update. Things like you can now play the arpeggiations from an external keyboard. It has customizable bounce patterns, has extended effects, octave locking, better controls, better MIDI, better synchronization, USB host support, and a whole load of bug fixes. So it's good, it's developing, it's growing, it's becoming more and more useful, and your man is responding to feature requests, which is great. He's going to be at Synth East, which is very exciting, so I look forward to getting the proper tour and actually understanding how the thing works. Here's a modular company I hadn't come across before called FKMG, and they've got a couple of modules out which are weird and interesting, and that's the kind of thing that we like, weird and interesting. There's Idein, which is an optic gate and trigger generator, which is based around this big all-seeing eye sensor in the middle, which is not censoring just light, it's censoring colour. So once certain thresholds of colour are met, it then produces a trigger. So it's using the environment around itself in order to interpret that into triggers, which is fascinating, really. And it'll quite happily just all play by itself, or of course you can interact by getting yourself in the way or showing it a colour perhaps or something. I'm not really sure, but it just sounds like a really interesting way of generating stuff, because you're going to be standing in front of your modular probably playing with it, and your movement is going to affect that. I think that's quite an interesting idea. Along with that, they have a module called Klima, which is a logic based module, but it takes information from the atmosphere, so like your height, your altitude, atmospheric conditions, pressure, temperature, that kind of thing. It uses the sort of data around you and then compares it to whatever signal you're sending it. So you'd probably stuff something in like a sequence or something, and it would be using atmospheric sensors to manipulate and compare and to do crazy logic things with. So that's a bit weird. There's also an expander for both of these modules, which turns the gates and triggers into randomly stepped voltages, so you can get a tune out as well as triggers and gates out. Interesting. Not sure I've explained it very well, but it's the sort of thing you could sit into a rack and it would just play all by itself depending on what's going on. I wonder if you sat it there all day, when the light is changing, the atmospheric conditions are changing, how that changes the sequence and the gates and the sort of patterns it's generating, and whether that's even noticeable or measurable. But fascinating. Something else that's fascinating is the Thererec. Thererec? Thererec from Clank. Who cares what it's called? It's something about a theremin combined with a tape recorder is the idea. And in a module, what that's trying to do is using your gestures or movement and turning that into modulation. But it's not just letting you modulate, it records that. So it's recording your gestures and movement in front of the sensors, records all of that, and then you can loop it and use that as modulation. And you can then change the speed and scale it and that sort of thing. It's quite interesting. I tend to like all of these interactive ways of generating voltage, and I always like a way of capturing a movement to continue some automation or a line of modulation into something, because LFOs could be a little bit ordered or a little bit random, if you know what I mean. Whereas if you can put something into the exact sort of movement and level of rhythm if you like, and then have that tumble and repeat and move, I think that's really interesting. And there's lots of different ways in which to do this, but the Thererec from Clank, great name for a modular company, Clank, it just looks really instant and quite fun and easy and straightforward, and that's what you need with this sort of thing, particularly in performance. You just want to hit a button and go wacky wiggy walk and hit a button and it's off, That's what you want. I want more of that, please. Thank you. The Dominus Dual VCO is from Arcaico, I think it's called, and it's two saw-core oscillators being able to be completely fully independent, pushed apart and yet married together beautifully to feed and cross-modulate from one to the other. They can create four waveforms, which can then collide into each other, and then you can send it off down for a bit of wave folding. There's a lot of scope, of course, for modulation, but also a lot of scope for using them individually, and I quite like that in a complex oscillator. I think sometimes we get too lost in the cross modulation, and that becomes all the focus, when actually a dual oscillator can be just a flipping fat saw wave source, two of them running together, a little bit detuned. Oh, that's gorgeous. I don't have to be FMing all the time, crossing from one into the other and then folding it into oblivion. Don't have to do that, but you can do that if you want. So what I like about the Dominus is just how clear the layout is, how obvious it is to use it. You can see both oscillators separately, and you can see the section in the middle that brings them together. It's not complicated, it's good, simple. I've got all the outputs for all of the waveforms. So I just want to use those, whether I'm mucking about in the middle or not. I can still drag out those waveforms and use them in my rack. So I really appreciate that kind of thing. Might have to give that a go. So, and finally, where are we with Synth East and all that kind of rubbish? Well, it's only a week away. Good Lord, by the time I get this uploaded, I should think. And I'm going out of my mind with the pressure and anxiousness of it all. Having now spent a week getting this working, which I had not intended. I now have a lot less time to get my act together. Literally get my act together for performing on next Saturday night. But I am full of buoyancy, energy, craziness, staying awake all night, trying to pull this thing together. So I think over this next week they will probably see one or two more preparation for Synth East videos popping up as I try to just get my head around what on earth is going on. But I know deep in my soul that with a bunch of modular I can make some sound. You know, I can do that. I can absolutely do that. And that's what I'll be doing. Meanwhile, in terms of the rest of the show, we just put me aside for the moment. I mean, why would you? I don't quite know why, really. It's my show. It's about me. I think we should probably just keep on talking about me. I think that's what's important. And that's what you out there ultimately want to hear about. I mean, which shirt am I going to use? I think I might bring 3 and change them throughout the day. That was my feeling on that. But anyway, in terms of the show itself, the day itself, of course, it is sold out. There's no more tickets. The evening, there still is a few tickets left if you'd like to come and see us perform. And Finley Shakespeare and Nick Colt-Void. That should be awesome. So don't miss out on that just because you can't come for the day. Come to the evening. That's also going to be great. We'll still all be there, probably. So that'll be great. But during the day, we've now got something in the region of 22 manufacturers coming along. Got Korg, Source that are bringing Arturia, Osmose, Moog, that kind of thing along. We've got Thonk bringing all the kits. We've got Bastl, SOMA Labs, Bafako are all going to be there, which is really exciting. I've got RYK with their Vector Wave bits and pieces. Modular are going to be there. Some other modular bits and pieces. Just brilliant. I'm sorry if I'm leaving anybody out. AMS Synths, ALM Busy Circuits. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Absolutely brilliant. There'll be cases and stuff. There'll be things you can buy. Who knows? Might even be a t-shirt. Just don't know, do you? So it's going to be a great day for everyone who's got a ticket. It's going to be a fantastic time. I hope it all goes smoothly. And if it doesn't go smoothly, if it goes as rough as heck, then just be patient. Just relax. It'll all be great. It only cost you $5. Not the end of the world. And we'll do our best to entertain you. Maybe give you some crisps or something. But it should be great. I'm looking forward to it. Everything is more or less done, I think. There have been all sorts of last-minute hiccups, as you can imagine. And then trying to find somewhere to meet up on the Friday night has been a bit of a rigmarole. But I think we'll get there. I think we'll definitely get there. I mean, it's been very exciting. It's been both easier than I thought it would be ultimately, and it's been a bit tricky at times too. It's been quite stressful, but it's an exciting and hopefully worthwhile thing to have put together, you know. And I just dearly hope that everyone enjoys it, has a good time, and that we think, yeah, let's do this again. Let's do it again. Yeah. That was the plan, so I'm so looking forward to seeing everybody. And again, I'll just put forward that thing that, you know, I can be socially awkward, as many of us can, but don't worry about that. We'll just try our best to be friendly, and if for any reason I'm not absolutely overwhelmingly friendly and interested in you, it's purely because I'm going to be scared out of my wits because I'm going to have to perform and do something like that. The other thing is that apparently the weather forecast is snow drifts and stuff, so that's good. So I think that's it. So what's coming up? Well, that's what's coming up this week. Live stream. I'll hope to do one on the Sunday after Synth East. I think that's my plan. I will be filming various things at Synth East. I don't think there'll be any live streaming. I think that'll be too hard. But we'll be trying to film and capture lots of stuff that will be sticking up after that. And then following on for that, I've got acres of things to do as usual. I've got a whole load of DIY, lots of lovely kits. I've got some serious things to do. I've got for instance, a lovely video to do on the Surface Pro 9, which I have here. I've also got a fabulous SSL audio interface that I want to do a review of, that I want to buy. I've got it on loan at the moment to replace my audio fuse. So endless and exciting things to do. And of course, don't forget the Deckard's Dream, which I turned down, so you can't hear it right now. If you want to hear it, go and check out the last of my series of videos. But there will be one more video to come where I finish it off and tie it all down and put it in the case, and we do really go to town on the sounds then, and that'll be great. So 1 week to go. I've had a very exciting week so far. Hopefully this week will be as equally as creative, hopefully less frustrating, and more musically awesome. So that'll do. In the meantime, go and make some tunes.